Chris Lowe reports that a really cool thing is happening to Coach Saban or for Coach Saban. So if you're watching this on Thursday evening, you know by now that there is a resolution on the table, University of Alabama Board of Regents, to rename the football field inside of Bryant-Denny Stadium. And Chris Lowe has it on authority that that field will be renamed for Coach Saban. I love that. I love that because it is shocking, but also right on time. It's shocking because when he decided to retire, we all were caught off guard, right? We knew that it was a possibility. We knew it could happen, but we were caught off guard. He retires on January 10th. He leaves the program in a space where Kalen DeBoer feels like he could pick it up and run with it, and he has. Alabama's going to be a preseason top 10 team, if not one of the 4 best teams in the SEC to start the year, in large part because of the shape that Coach Saban handed it over in. But also, not 6 months after he retired and has gone into an entirely different profession of being in media, working at ESPN, doing college football analysis, the University of Alabama is wasting no time in letting everybody know what they think about the greatest college football coach who has ever lived. I really love that. I love that because the University of Alabama understands the significance of the greatest head coach in football, but also this is yet another really cool piece of Nick Saban's story. Because one of the things I always point out as a guy that has loved Nick Saban and followed him from afar for some time is just what that man put up with and went through before he became who he is. You got to understand, he started coaching football in 1971. He didn't have a really good football team until he was at Toledo in the late 80s, and he didn't have a team capable of winning a national championship till he got to LSU 2000. But he also is responsible for making LSU into who you know LSU to be now. LSU wasn't, let me put this another way. Not everybody's on the program at LSU in Louisiana. And you just going to have to ask your friend what I mean by that when I say I ain't on a program. But I'm going to tell you a story that kind of lends itself to this, so you might catch my meaning. So Nick Saban gets to LSU 2000, and he asks, looking around at the team, why don't we have all the best players from Louisiana? And all the best players from Louisiana, they told him, don't go here. And Coach Saban looked around and was like, BS, they don't go here? So along with making those inroads with high school football coaches and their parents and recruits, he also wanted to put a fence around the state of Louisiana. And at the time, the highest rated tight end in the country was Mark Spears. Mark Spears was not a tight end. He just showed up to a camp and played his behind off, and they made him a tight end even though he was a defensive end. And in Mark Spears' telling of this story, Coach Saban shows up to recruit him, and he says, Marcus, I can't let you leave the state. To which Mark Spears says, Coach, you ain't got to worry about me leaving the state. I'm going right down the road to Southern. And I fell out because Southern is also in Baton Rouge, like LSU is in Baton Rouge. And Nick Saban spent the better part of Mark Spears' recruiting that year trying to convince him to go the other way, to go to LSU. And along with that, they win a national championship in 2003. And that becomes the blueprint for how LSU has remained a national title contender for coming up on 21 years. When he left that job, LSU fans took it hard, but they wanted him to be happy, and he thought he was going to be happy at Miami. But one of the things that he learned as a Miami Dolphins head coach is just how good he had it in college football because he's built for that, not necessarily built for the NFL. He would tell Monty Burke in his book, The Making of a Coach, what he learned in the NFL is that the NFL is full of socialists, that salary cap doesn't help you get great players, and that even if you are good at selecting talent, you only get to do that in the NFL draft at a high level, and you only get one first-round draft pick. And that's if your general manager ain't traded it away. What he failed to realize when he took that job in Miami is that at LSU, he could get 25 first-round draft picks. This is before the transfer portal, and this is before name, image, and likeness, but he could sign them, and he didn't need a salary cap. He just needed to out-recruit other people, and he could outwork anybody. That's me. That's how I feel. If you give me the same resources as a peer, I'm going to beat him because I'll just outwork him. And that has been him the whole time. The number of men that showed up at SEC Media Days to talk about Coach Saban and what he meant to them is long and distinguished. Like it's Steve Sarkisian, head coach at Texas, talking about what Coach Saban meant to him. Billy Napier at Florida. The 2015 staff at Alabama is ridiculous. It's legendary. Everybody on that staff feels like they became a major college football coach. Right down to the GA and Dan Lanning, who's at Oregon now. You know, from Kirby Smart on down. Mario Cristobal, right? We can keep going on that. Like, even Sam Pittman came out of the woodwork to say, Coach Saban changed my life. Changed my life financially, changed my life as a coach, and helped put him on a path to becoming the head coach at Arkansas. To have that sort of legacy is what we all want for ourselves and what we all want for our friends. This naming of the field is yet another example of the University of Alabama recognizing what they had. It also is the second university to look at Nick Saban and say, we owe you a debt. I remember when he went into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, he was kind of shocked by it. He said so. And he said, I didn't know that LSU would do that for me or Louisiana would do that for me. But, you know, as the fury set down when he took the job at Alabama, that's exactly what happened. At the University of Alabama, they owe so much of their success academically as well as athletically to what that man brought with him, which is a culture. A culture that people were asked to get behind because the point was, let Nick Saban cook and you will enjoy the meal. Do you realize that there's a stretch at Alabama where if you played out of Alabama for 4 years, you were guaranteed a national championship? There's also putting together what I think is the greatest college football team of all time in 2020. I say that because I understand the circumstances, and I get that a lot of people aren't really going to look back at the pandemic and know what it was for us that lived through it. But the idea that you could field a football team that can go 13-0 and it not really be close the whole way was it was truly the stuff that you make up. Yet you couldn't imagine that. You couldn't, because we didn't even know if we were going to be playing football that year. The Big Ten canceled the damn season. You know, we had players dropping left and right for COVID. We didn't know if we have enough players to field a team. We didn't get to go to stadiums to watch the teams play. You're playing mostly empty places in other parts of the country. Hell, Georgia got Brock Bowers because they were still playing football at a time when he wanted to play football. You know, California, they weren't playing football. And yet, he puts together a program that not only goes 13-0, but really the only significant dude to be lost to COVID was him. He had to miss a game. Steve Sarkisian was the acting head coach for that. But that's his legacy, man. The people he touches, the people who he gave a shot to, the people that he taught the game to, and his old school ball nature because he was just going to out-recruit you. And I learned so much more about what Coach Saban hates this week than I thought I would. So pretty much the thing that I think you should know is Coach Saban hates a small defensive line and he hates a small offensive line. You got to have the beef if you're going to play for Saban or if you expect to win at a high level in the SEC. I loved how he's saying Ole Miss, who I think is a top 10 team, finally looks like an SEC team because they're big up front on both sides. That Mississippi State's going to have a hard time because they're not necessarily big enough on the offensive defensive line. That Oklahoma might struggle for the same reasons. He is really on this thing of, do you have guys that are 6'5", 6'6", 320 and can move? Because if you don't, I'm going to beat you. That's what this league is about. It's one score league for that reason. Do we have more Jimmies and Joes in the trenches than you do? He made football not just an occupation, but a vocation. He had a way of getting his point across that was both fiery and passionate. And as a person who loves both of those things in equal measure, I am grateful to know that we get to celebrate and give flowers to Coach Saban as he's going to get to see Nick Saban feel.